Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. In today's video we're going to take a look at getting started with a Skaven in Warhammer Age of Sigmar 4th edition using the faction's Spearhead box set. Today's video is sponsored by Gap Games, a fantastic miniature wargaming store in Queensland, Australia. They stock a wide variety of miniature wargames from all things Games Workshop to some of my personal favourites, Conquest of the Last Argument of Kings, and all things Modifius wargames as well. Use our affiliate code in the link below to help support both this fantastic store and the channel as well. To start with, in this box set, we have a Skaven Seer. This is a Skaven Wizard 1 character that's able to cast some magic for us, also summon manifestations to the table, and get rid of our enemies on the table as well. It has 5 health, a 6-inch move, 6+ save, and control score of 2. Its Warpstone Staff is what you expect for a wizard with 3 attacks, hitting and wounding on 4s, 1 rend, damage D3. Now it does have a cool ability for its magic called the Warpstone Shards, and this can be used during your hero phase. The next time you make a casting roll for this unit, you can roll 3d6 instead of 2d6, and this roll cannot be re-rolled or modified in any way. If the casting roll is a 13, the spell is successfully cast and cannot be unbound in any way, but after the effect of the spell has been resolved, you inflict D3 mortal damage on the unit. If the casting roll is not 13, you simply remove 1 dice of your choice from the casting roll and use the remaining 2d6 as your casting roll. This is all a pretty cool way to get some more powerful spells through if you need. There is very little negative to doing so. If you roll a 13, you get an irresistible and you take D3 mortals. It's not the worst thing. Now, as mentioned, this is a character model, a hero, so it is able to take and lead a regiment. In its particular regiments, it can have 0 to 1 Skaven Overclaws, which are a bunch of different sort of smaller characters you can have, particularly the Skaven Warlord on foot. And you can also have any Skaven units you want. So this would be from Clan Mulder, Pestilence, Eshin, Verminus. A lot of different options here, as these are sort of the spiritual leaders of the Skaven. Our first unit are the Clanrats, and we get 20 of them in the box set. They have 1 health each, a 6-inch move, and 5+ save with control score of 1. In combat, they do attack with their rusty weapons, 2 attacks each, 4s to hit, 5s to wound, no rend damage 1, but they do have the crit auto wound ability. What this does is each time you roll a 6 to hit or a critical hit, you will automatically wound. You don't need to make a wound roll, and it will just go straight through to your opponent's save rolls. Now this unit also has the Sealing Swarm ability, which can be used at the end of any turn, and you can turn D3 slain models to the unit. They can also take what is known as a full command. This would be Champion, Musician, and Standard Bearer within the unit as well, and I always recommend building these as well. Next are the Stormfiends, and these are a really powerful unit for the Skaven. These are souped up rat ogres that have been converted by clan scryers, so a combination of 2 great clans coming together to create some amazing Skaven beasties. 6 health each with a 6-inch move, 4+ save, and control score of 2. Now there is some really interesting ways in which you can build these, and depending sort of what ones you build depends on the other ones you have to build. 1 in 3 models can be armed with either warp fire projectors and wind launchers, and both those variations get clubbing blows as well. Now the warp fire projectors are very short range, but they do have the shoot in combat ability and put out an awful lot of attacks, while the wind launchers themselves are a 15-inch range and have the highest rend and damage of any of the ranged attack options we have. The second one of your Stormfiends can be armed with rattling cannons and clubbing blows, or grinder fists. The rattling cannons are a weapon that puts out a ridiculous amount of shooting. They are, albeit not as powerful, or at least not as much rend as the warpfire projectors mentioned previous. But the other option, grinder fists, are a pretty decent close combat weapon. The grinder fists will also give you the ability of grinder fist tunnelers, which allows you to set this unit up off the board and bring them on from reserves, tunneling up from the ground. And the last one you can have is either Doomflayer gauntlets or shock gauntlets. Doomflayer gauntlets have charge +1 damage, which means anytime they charge they get an extra opponent's point of damage, which means they will be D3 +1 damage on the charge with 5 attacks and a rend of 2, hitting on 4s and winning on 2s is pretty solid. The other option, the shock gauntlets, however, hits on a 4+, wounds on a 2+ with rend 1, damage 2, but each time they make a critical hit with their attacks, they will instead inflict D6 hits. Each of these will need to have a wound and save roll made for them individually as well. All in all, this is a really versatile unit that is super heavy hitting, can be kitted out in a variety of different ways to deal with many different targets. They can specialize in anti-infantry if you go for, say, waterfire projectors and rattling guns in the same one, along with like your shock gauntlets, make a great anti-infantry unit. They can be much more sort of geared towards taking out heavy targets if you go for something like your Doomflayer gauntlets and wind launchers on the unit as well. And of course, they can also be tunneling to give you some great maneuverability across the table if you do choose to take the grinder fists. Lastly, in the box set, we get the Warp Lightning Cannon. Now this is one of two options we can build up this model, as the other is the Plague Claw Catapult, but I think for the purposes of this video, we are going to look at the Warp Lightning Cannon. I think it is my preferred option. It's got 8 health, a 3-inch move, 4+ save, and control score of 2. The Warp Lightning Blaster is really interesting because it has a 20-inch range and puts out 2d6 attacks that hit on a 4+, but with the Warp Lightning Blast passive ability, each time an attack is made with this weapon, must target the same enemy unit, but each hit just automatically inflicts a point of mortal damage. You can obviously boost this hit roll to be down to like a 3+ with all out attack or something like that. So mortals on 3+ is pretty cool. It does have a few attacks in combat. These aren't anything to write home about. But it also has the more Warp Lightning ability, which is something common amongst the pure Scryer units, where once per turn, army-wide, your shooting phase, you can supercharge this unit essentially, and you'll change the ability of your attacks. You'll have add 6 to the attacks characteristic of the unit's Warp Lightning Blast for the rest of the turn. However, for each roll of a 1 for your attacks, you'll inflict D3 mortal damage on this unit after the shoot ability has been resolved. So you got every chance you're going to explode, but you can supercharge your unit to do some incredible, powerful damage. This is a pretty fun sort of ability, and I'd definitely combine more Warp Lightning if you're using all that attack on it, getting that bonus to hit. I definitely wouldn't do it without the bonus to hit. But this is, just another unit that's going to provide some really swingy, really fun and flavorful play to your force. And so the first unit we're going to look to add is bring another character into our force in the form of the awesome Warlock Bombardier. This is going to bring some much needed anti-infantry into our force, and this will allow us to spec maybe the Stormfiends we have in the force into a more sort of heavier infantry killing force. Now, the Warlock Bombardier himself has 5 health, a 6-inch move, 5+ save, and control score of 2. His anti-infantry power, though, comes in the form of his Doom Rocket, 18-inch range, 2 attacks, 4s to hit and 3s to wound with Rend 1 damage d6 and the anti-infantry +1 Rend ability. This means against the infantry, he's going to be Rend 2 damage d6. Now, you can also use a reaction called More Doom, which can be used after you've declared a shoot ability with this model. You roll a dice on a 2+, you change the damage characteristic of the Doom Rocket to D3 +3, however on a roll of a 1 you will do D3 mortal damage to yourself as maybe the rocket blows up in your face. This is pretty cool, it gives you a bit more consistent damage, it can really help clear off enemy units for quite a cheap cost. Now, it also does have the explosive payload ability, which further sort of pushes into the targets it wants to be fighting against. You add 1 to hit rolls for attacks with this model that target an enemy unit with 10 or more models in it. This, just really sort of gives you the idea if this wants to be shooting large units of enemy infantry, anything with a 5+ save is going to hate versing this, as it's just going to remove their armor entirely if they're infantry against them. Now, this model is a character, as I said, and can lead its own regiment. It can have 0 to 1 units of Clanrats in its regiment. It can also have any Scryer units that it wants as well. So the last unit we're going to look to add, and the second one, are the Warplock jezzails, who have some amazing brand new miniatures. They've got 2 health each, a 6-inch move, 4+ save, control score of 1, and their Warplock jezzails are their main ranged weapon, as the name of them might suggest. The 24-inch range, which in the new edition of Age of Sigmar is pretty much as big as it gets. There's not many things with bigger range than that in the game. 2 attacks each, 4s to hit, 3s to wound with Rend 2 damage 2 and the crit auto wound ability, meaning that any 6s to hit or critical hits will automatically wound and don't need to make a wound roll. They do have a couple attacks in combat, but there's nothing really to them. But they have the Warpstone Sniper's ability they get in the shooting phase. The effect of this is if this unit's not used a move ability, they add 1 to their hit rolls, taking them down to 3s and 3s, which is rather nice. These are going to be something that targets more heavy elite units. They're not going to be targeting, the same sort of things that your Warlock Bombardier is. They've got that nice innate Rend 2 on there and damage 2 against everything. These are going to be targeting things like Stormcast Eternal units, Chaos Warriors, and that sort of ilk. Now, if we're looking to add some other things we need to complete our force, the first of these will be the faction terrain for the Skaven. Skaven have access to their own unique terrain piece that is part of their allegiance abilities, and these are the Gnaw holes. You get to bring these along to your game for free, and you can pick up these. Some armies do have faction terrain, some do not, but Skaven get their own. Another thing you're going to want to pick up is manifestations. With this initial list, and indeed from the initial box set, we do have wizards, and wizards are able to summon manifestations or endless spells to the table. There's a large variety of these, whether from forbidden power or from malign sorcery, and some factions like the Skaven have their own of them as well. Our list today is obviously going to be with the Skaven, and for our battle formation we've gone for the Warplock Convocation. This is going to allow us once per turn during our shooting phase to pick up to 3 friendly scryer units and roll the dice for each target and apply the corresponding. They can either inflict some mortal damage on themselves, add 1 to their wound rolls, or in addition to the effect of more power, they add 1 to the rend as well, so they get +1 rend and +1 to wound. Our first regiment will be led by our Grey Seer, who is going to be our general. This model is going to also have the heroic trait Skilled Manipulator, which allows it to essentially palm off some wounds onto nearby friendly units, giving itself a ward 4+ in the meantime as well. Now for units in this, we've just gone for the 20 Clanrat unit. This is just going to give us some bodies, of course, to pass off those wounds with Skilled Manipulator onto. Our second regiment is going to be led by our Warlock Bombardier, and this model is going to have the Skaven Brew. With Skaven Brew, we get to pick a friendly non-hero Skaven infantry unit once per battle in any combat phase, and we inflict D3 mortal damage on the target, then add 1 to the attack characteristic of their melee weapons. This would be particularly great to use on our Stormfiends. Now we've also gone for taking units in here, so for him we've got the units of Stormfiends, Warp Lightning Cannon and the Warplock jezzails all joining in his regiment. We hope this video was helpful in getting you started with Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and it was able to give you some ideas and inspiration to start your own force in the game. If you have any other questions at all, please comment down below, and while you're there, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and join our Discord server to check out all our future Warhammer Age of Sigmar content.